Arizona, June 9, 2008. According to official police records, the body of a 30-year-old motivational speaker, Travis Alexander, was found in the master bathroom of his Mesa home. His friends had come to check on him after days without response. What they found would haunt not only the state of Arizona, but the entire country. Travis's body was lying in the shower, slumped against the tiled wall, water dripping over wounds that told a story no one could yet comprehend. 27 stab wounds, a slit throat, and a gunshot to the head. There were no signs of forced entry. His wallet and electronics were still there, but on the floor, partially soaked by the leaking shower, lay a digital camera, a Canon PowerShot, and inside that camera's memory card were photographs taken only moments before the murder. Images of Travis in the shower, smiling, looking directly into the lens, a timestamp from that very day. And then the final image, a blurred shot of the bathroom floor, streaked with blood. At first, police suspected a burglary gone wrong, but within hours, they discovered something far more disturbing. The fingerprints, the tire tracks, and the phone calls all led to one person. Her name was Jodi Arias. To those who knew her, Jodi was charming, intelligent, and beautiful, a soft-spoken photographer who had once been Travis's girlfriend. But as investigators would soon learn, her love for him had turned into something darker, something obsessive, something lethal. Witnesses later said Travis was trying to distance himself, that he feared Jodi was following him, showing up uninvited, hacking his social media. He had even confided in friends that he was afraid of what she might do. Still, no one expected what came next. Because this was not just a murder, it was a performance. A story of devotion and rage, betrayal and control. A case that would expose the fragile line between love and madness. And the woman at the center of it all, Jodi Arias, would soon become one of the most infamous figures in American crime history. Some say it was premeditated revenge. Others believe it was a crime of passion. But one thing is certain. When Travis Alexander opened his door that June afternoon, he invited in the last person he would ever see alive. And according to those final images, she was holding the camera. The perfect couple. According to those who knew them, Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias seemed like a picture-perfect couple when they first met in September 2006 at a conference in Las Vegas. Travis was 28, confident, successful, and deeply rooted in his Mormon faith. Jodi was 26, artistic, alluring, and eager to reinvent herself. Friends recalled how Travis was instantly drawn to her. He told one close friend that Jodi had the most captivating eyes he'd ever seen. Within days, they were inseparable. They attended church together, exchanged endless text messages, and spoke of building a life grounded in both faith and ambition. But beneath the surface, something was off. Travis's friends noticed at first how quickly Jodi had integrated herself into his world. She attended his work events, followed him on trips, even converted to Mormonism to be worthy of him. Within 2 months of meeting, she was baptized by Travis himself in his church's baptismal font. For Travis, this was a powerful gesture. For Jodi, it was proof of destiny. He often wrote about their relationship in his personal journal. Jodi makes me feel alive, but she's unpredictable, passionate one moment, cold the next. I'm not sure which version of her is real. As months passed, their romance became increasingly intense and complicated. Despite his religious beliefs that condemned premarital intimacy, Travis confided in friends that he and Jodi had crossed that line. He was racked with guilt. She, on the other hand, described their encounters as spiritual experiences. The dynamic between them had shifted. He wanted to slow things down, to focus on his career, his faith, and finding a stable partner. Jodi, however, saw his hesitation as rejection. To her, Travis wasn't just a boyfriend, he was the center of her universe. When he began to pull away, she responded by tightening her grip. She'd call repeatedly, leave dozens of voicemails, and show up at his house unannounced. He laughed it off at first, telling friends, "She's a little intense, but she means well." But the laughter didn't last. Over time, Travis's once vibrant personality began to change. He withdrew from his circle of friends, avoided social gatherings, and seemed constantly distracted. Those closest to him later said they could feel the tension whenever Jodi was around. The love story that began with promise was quietly unraveling. The man who once believed he'd found his soulmate was starting to realize he might have let a storm into his life. And as the months moved on, that storm was gathering strength. The secret affair. By early 2007, the relationship between Travis Alexander and Jodi Arias had entered a darker, more complicated phase. What began as mutual affection had turned into a secret, one both thrilling and shameful. To the outside world, they were simply friends. Travis, respected in his church and community, needed to maintain the image of purity that his faith demanded. But behind closed doors, their connection had taken a different turn. According to police interviews and recovered text messages, the couple's private encounters were explicit, emotional, and consuming. They documented everything: photos, recordings, notes written in code. In one message, Jodi wrote, "No one has ever loved you like I do. You are mine, Travis, forever." To Travis's friends, the tone of her devotion seemed unsettling. Some warned him that Jodi was becoming too attached, too invasive. One friend, Chris Hughes, later testified, it was like she couldn't breathe without him. But Travis was caught between two worlds: the devout Mormon he aspired to be, and the flawed man who couldn't resist temptation. Each time he tried to end things, she would appear again, at his house, at his church, even on trips he hadn't invited her to. When asked why he tolerated it, he once said quietly, "Because when she's gone, I miss her, and when she's here, I'm afraid." Jodi had a way of keeping herself connected to him. She memorized his passwords, read his emails, and according to later evidence, hacked into his Facebook account. Yet Travis, ever the optimist, believed he could manage it, that her behavior came from love, not control. Their secret meetings continued. In hotel rooms and late-night visits, they repeated the same cycle: desire, guilt, forgiveness, and denial. For Jodi, each encounter reaffirmed her belief that they were destined to be together. For Travis, each one pushed him further into moral conflict. He once wrote in his journal, "Jodi is amazing, but she scares me. She's the kind of girl you can't say no to, even when you should." By the end of 2007, Travis had begun seeing someone new, a woman named Lisa Andrews. When Jodi found out, she didn't confront him directly. Instead, Lisa began receiving strange phone calls, silent ones. Her tires were slashed. She found her property vandalized. No one ever proved Jodi was behind it, but Travis's friends had no doubts. He tried to escape, one said later, but she wasn't going to let him. It was a love that no longer belonged to two people. It had become a shadow, a possession. And in that shadow, something dangerous was growing. The breakup, under that. By early 2008, Travis Alexander was trying to regain control of his life. The success he had built in his career as a motivational speaker and salesman was now overshadowed by chaos. He told friends he was done with Jodi Arias, that the relationship had become toxic and unpredictable. He wanted peace, stability, and a fresh start. But walking away from Jodi would not be easy. According to testimony from close friends, Travis had broken things off with Jodi several times before. Each time, she would plead, cry, or threaten to hurt herself. Then, almost inevitably, they would reconcile. It was a cycle of emotional manipulation that left him exhausted. But in early 2008, he made it clear it was over. He started dating again, posting photos of his new social life online. Jodi noticed every post, every comment, every new name on his profile, and soon, strange things began happening again. Friends said Jodi appeared at Travis's house late at night. Once, she was found sleeping on his couch after sneaking in through the dog door. Travis confided to a friend, "I'm afraid of her, but I don't want to make her angry." His fear was not unfounded. Jodi's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She followed him on trips, showed up at his work events uninvited, and called him repeatedly, sometimes over 50 times a day. When he blocked her number, she used different phones. When he changed his passwords, she found new ways to reach him. She had become, in every sense, obsessed. Friends later testified that Travis had planned to take a woman named Mimi Hall to a company retreat in Cancun that June. He was excited, optimistic, and ready to move on. But Jodi found out. In one text exchange recovered from his phone, Travis wrote, "You are the worst thing that ever happened to me." Her response, "You have no idea how much I've sacrificed for you." Behind the scenes, Jodi began plotting. In May 2008, she rented a car, filled several gas cans, and told friends she was going on a road trip to Utah. Investigators would later note that she didn't want to leave a record of gas station stops. It was a detail that seemed insignificant until they traced her route directly through Mesa, Arizona. According to official reports, Travis was last seen alive on June 4, 2008. He had invited Jodi to his house for one final conversation. Perhaps he wanted closure. Perhaps he still believed he could reason with her. But that night, no one heard from him again. He had finally tried to end it, and that decision would cost him his life. The camera that killed. According to official records, the final hours of Travis Alexander's life were documented in chilling detail by the very person who took them away. The evidence that would later convict Jodi Arias was not a confession, nor a witness, but a camera. On June 4, 2008, Travis's home in Mesa, Arizona, appeared ordinary. His roommates were out, and the summer air hung heavy over the desert. Inside, the two of them, Travis and Jodi, spent the day together. What exactly happened in those hours remains partly unknown, but the photographs recovered from a damaged Canon PowerShot tell a haunting story. At 1:30 p.m., the first images show Jodi smiling. At 1:45, Travis is in the shower, looking directly into the camera lens. His expression is calm, unaware, almost trusting. The timestamps reveal a sequence of pictures, close-ups, angles, reflections, like someone documenting a lover, not a victim. And then, at 5:32 p.m., everything changes. The final photo is blurry. A leg, a floor, a smear of red. Investigators later determined it was taken moments after Travis had been stabbed. The camera had fallen, capturing the aftermath of violence it could not comprehend. Police later found that same camera in the washing machine, soaked, as if someone had tried to erase its memory. But the card inside survived, and with it, every moment leading up to his death. When detectives examined the photos, they saw not only evidence of murder, but of ritual. The clean bathroom tiles, the camera positioned at deliberate angles, and Jodi's fingerprints, all pointed to someone who wanted to control the narrative. This wasn't an act of chaos. It was a performance. Experts would later describe Jodi's behavior as staging, a psychological need to rewrite reality. The photographs, meant to preserve intimacy, became a record of destruction. She wanted to immortalize him, to keep him, even in death. Travis's friends said he trusted her too easily, that he always wanted to believe the best in people. That belief was the final thing she took from him. When detectives showed the recovered photos in court, the jury sat in silence. One image, his face half turned under running water, unaware of the horror seconds away, became the symbol of the case. A single picture of innocence, framed by the shadow of betrayal. The camera didn't just capture the crime. It told the story of a man's last moments, and the woman who decided that, if she couldn't have him alive, she would keep him in memory, forever. June 9, 2008, 5 days after Travis Alexander's last known contact. According to police reports, it was his friends who first grew alarmed. Travis had missed important calls, skipped business meetings, and hadn't responded to texts for nearly a week. Highly unusual for a man known for punctuality and enthusiasm. Concern turned to fear when he failed to show up for a company trip to Cancun, one he'd planned meticulously. That night, a small group of his closest friends drove to his Mesa home. The front door was locked, and his car was in the driveway. Inside, they found his roommates, who said they thought he was out of town. But the stench, faint yet unmistakable, suggested otherwise. One friend, using a spare key, opened the master bedroom. The moment the door swung open, the smell hit them like a wave. They called out his name, but there was only silence. The dog barked. Then, someone screamed. In the bathroom, under flickering fluorescent light, they found him. A scene was horrific. The tiled floor stained dark, the shower still wet, and his lifeless body crumpled inside. One of the friends dialed 911, their voice trembling as they told the dispatcher, "There's blood everywhere. I think he's dead. There's so much blood." Police arrived within minutes. Officers secured the scene, photographing every inch. The crime scene team documented a blood trail leading from the hallway to the bathroom. The camera, the one that had recorded his last hours, lay in the washing machine, wet but intact. Detectives noted something chilling. Nothing in the house suggested robbery. His wallet, electronics, and expensive camera equipment remained untouched. The only thing missing was peace. When they questioned his roommates, both claimed ignorance. They said they hadn't noticed anything unusual, despite living in the same house. But one roommate admitted, Jodi used to come around a lot. Sometimes we'd see her car parked outside at night. Within 24 hours, Jodi Arias' name was at the top of the suspect list. Police contacted her for questioning. On the phone, she sounded calm, almost helpful. "I can't believe this happened," she said. "Travis was my friend. I loved him once, but we hadn't spoken in a while." But phone records and witness statements told a different story. She'd been calling him repeatedly in the days leading up to the murder. And according to the rental car company in Redding, California, she had driven nearly 3,000 miles that week, enough to make the trip to Mesa and back. Detectives had their first clue, their first suspect, and a mountain of questions. And yet, the most important piece of evidence, the one that would unravel her web of lies, was already in their hands. The camera she had tried to destroy. Its memory card was about to speak louder than she ever could. According to the official case files, the investigation into Travis Alexander's murder quickly became one of the most detailed forensic pursuits in Arizona history. Every piece of the puzzle, from tire tracks to fingerprints, began to form a haunting portrait of premeditation. The digital camera found in the washing machine proved to be the breakthrough. Forensic technicians carefully dried and dismantled the device, salvaging the SD card inside. When they recovered the images, what they saw left no doubt. Jodi Arias was with Travis on the day he died. The timestamps matched June 4th, 2008. The sequence showed the two of them together, alive, and then the blurred, bloody aftermath. But the photographs were only the beginning. In the bathroom and hallway, investigators found a palm print smeared in blood. Later testing revealed it contained a mixture of both Travis's and Jodi's DNA. There was no plausible explanation. She had been there. She had touched his blood. Detectives also examined the rental car she had returned in Redding, California. The odometer revealed more than 2,800 miles driven in a few days, an exact match for a round trip from her home to Mesa. In the trunk, police found traces of gasoline, consistent with the gas cans she had filled before leaving. When asked why she'd carried extra fuel, she replied, "I didn't want to stop at sketchy gas stations." Investigators believe the real reason was far simpler. She wanted to leave no paper trail. Phone records showed that Jodi's cell phone had been turned off for a crucial 18-hour window, precisely during the time Travis was killed. The phone was powered back on later, hundreds of miles away. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Detectives also recovered deleted voicemail messages and text exchanges between the two. In one, just days before his death, Travis wrote, "You're the worst thing that ever happened to me." In another, Jodi responded, "You have hurt me more than anyone ever could." It wasn't just physical evidence, it was emotional evidence. A digital diary of a love story collapsing into rage. Forensic analysts matched a strand of hair found near the bathroom sink to Jodi. Shoe prints leading from the bedroom to the bathroom matched her footwear size. Even the camera strap had her fingerprint on it. Detective Esteban Flores later told reporters, "Everything in that house screamed her name." And yet, when confronted with the mountain of proof, Jodi remained eerily calm. She agreed to speak with police voluntarily, insisting she had nothing to hide. She didn't yet realize that the evidence had already spoken for her. When investigators finally brought Jodi Arias in for questioning on July 15, 2008, they expected panic, denial, or tears. What they got instead was a performance. Inside the small, windowless interrogation room of the Mesa Police Department, she sat composed, polite, even smiling. Detective Esteban Flores began with simple questions about her relationship with Travis Alexander. Jodi spoke softly, her tone measured. She called him a good man and one of the best people I've ever known. When asked when she had last seen him, she hesitated, then said, "It's been months." The detectives knew that was a lie. They already had photos, phone logs, and receipts placing her in Mesa on June 4th. Still, she kept talking, calmly weaving a story that grew more tangled by the minute. At one point, Detective Flores slid a photograph across the table, a picture recovered from the camera's SD card. It showed Jodi and Travis together that very afternoon. Her face froze. Then, with a faint smile, she said, "Well, looks like you got me there." Yet, even faced with undeniable proof, she refused to confess. Instead, she pivoted, creating a new narrative on the spot. "Yes, I was there," she admitted, "but Travis was alive when I left. Someone else must have come after." The detectives didn't buy it. They pressed harder, confronting her with inconsistencies. Her voice cracked, her demeanor shifted, but her eyes stayed cold. When asked how she could explain the blood, the photos, the gas cans, she whispered, "You have no idea how things got out of control." For hours, she spun different versions of the same lie. First, she wasn't there. Then she was there, but didn't kill him. Finally, she said there had been two intruders, a man and a woman in ski masks, who broke into Travis's home and attacked them both. "They told me if I said anything, they'd kill my family," she claimed, her voice trembling. It was an unbelievable story, but she stuck to it, rehearsing her lines with the precision of an actress. Investigators later described her as eerily calm, even flirtatious. At one point, left alone in the interrogation room, she began singing softly to herself, "O Holy Night," as if she were in another world entirely. The psychological portrait emerging from that room was chilling. This was not the image of a terrified victim or a remorseful lover. It was the face of control, a woman rewriting reality to fit her own script. By the end of the interview, Detective Flores had heard enough. The next day, a warrant was issued for Jodi Arias' arrest. She was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. In her mugshot, she smiled, the manipulator. Once Jodi Arias was arrested, her behavior became even more baffling. In jail, she wasn't broken or frightened, she was performing. To some, she appeared charming and composed, to others, manipulative and dangerous. The world was about to witness one of the most surreal transformations in true crime history, the accused murderer becoming the star of her own show. While awaiting trial, Jodi gave interviews to local TV stations, presenting herself as calm, articulate, even friendly. "No jury will convict me," she said confidently, "because I am innocent." Her tone was light, her eyes steady, as though she truly believed her own words. Journalists described her as magnetic. The public couldn't look away. She flirted with the cameras, adjusted her hair, and smiled for reporters. One journalist later said, "It was like watching someone audition for a part, not defend themselves from a murder charge." Meanwhile, her legal defense team struggled to contain her impulsive behavior. She would contradict their advice, contact reporters, and send handwritten letters to fans who wrote to her in jail. Some of those letters were affectionate, others were venomous. She seemed to enjoy the attention, any attention. Psychologists later identified what they called narcissistic reinforcement. Every headline, every photograph, every whisper about her only made her stronger. She watched the news coverage obsessively, studying her own image. She wasn't terrified of the media, she was feeding on it. In phone calls to friends, she described herself as a victim of media bias and claimed she was being persecuted for loving too deeply. To others, she was coldly self-aware. In one recorded call, she laughed about how people were obsessed with her case, saying, "They're making me famous, just like OJ." Her manipulative behavior extended beyond the public eye. In jail, she befriended guards, flattered other inmates, and even convinced a few volunteers that she was being framed. At one point, she began selling her own drawings through a third party, signing them with a heart. To the investigators, this wasn't just arrogance, it was control. She was shaping her narrative, turning tragedy into theater. But to the families of Travis Alexander and those who had loved him, it felt like a second killing, a slow, public distortion of the man's memory. When she wasn't charming the cameras, she was strategizing. Her new story, her fourth version of events, would be unveiled in court. This time she would claim self-defense. Travis, she said, had become violent, and she had killed him in fear for her life. Her legal team was hesitant, but Jodi insisted. "I'm not a monster," she told them. "I'm a survivor." And as the trial date approached, America prepared to watch not just a murder case, but a psychological spectacle. Jodi Arias wasn't running from the spotlight. She was walking straight into it. The trial. On January 21, 2013, nearly 5 years after the murder, the trial of Jodi Arias began in Maricopa County Superior Court. The courtroom was filled to capacity. Reporters, true crime followers, and members of the public lined up hours before each session, hoping to secure a seat. It wasn't just a trial anymore, it was national theater. The prosecution, led by Juan Martinez, portrayed Jodi as a master manipulator, a woman driven by jealousy and revenge. This was not a crime of passion, Martinez told the jury. This was premeditated murder. He showed the photographs, the DNA, the gas receipts, the deleted voicemails, all pointing to a plan carried out with chilling precision. The defense painted a different picture. According to them, Jodi was a victim of emotional abuse, of manipulation, of love gone wrong. Her attorney, Kirk Nurmi, claimed that Travis had a dark side, that he had used Jodi and shamed her for their sexual relationship. She lived in fear, Nurmi argued, and one day, that fear became too much. But the evidence told a story that words could not soften. The jurors saw the images from the camera, the smiling faces, the shower scene, the blur of blood. They heard recordings of Jodi's calm voice in police interrogations. They saw her on the stand, confident and composed, speaking for 18 consecutive days, one of the longest testimonies by a defendant in U.S. criminal history. Jodi's version changed again during her testimony. She now claimed that Travis had attacked her in a fit of rage and that she had fought for her life. She cried, trembled, and described how she had blacked out during the killing. Yet her tears often came without emotion, her tone shifting between sorrow and self-pity. Some jurors later admitted that her words felt rehearsed, even theatrical. The prosecution countered with forensic facts that dismantled her story, piece by piece. There were no signs of struggle consistent with self-defense. The wounds were excessive, deliberate. The gunshot came last, not first, as she claimed, a final, calculated act to ensure he was dead. When the medical examiner took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. His testimony was graphic. The stab wounds to the back, the slashed throat so deep it nearly severed his head, the gunshot wound to the temple. Each injury was described in clinical detail, leaving no doubt about the brutality of the act. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy grew. News networks broadcast daily coverage, turning the trial into a cultural phenomenon. Commentators debated everything, from her hairstyle to her motives. For many Americans, Jodi Arias became a symbol of the thin line between love and lunacy. Inside the courtroom, she smiled occasionally at the cameras. As the trial stretched into its 4th month, one question lingered. Would the jury see her as a victim, or as a predator hiding behind tears? The answer was coming soon. The verdict. After 5 months of testimony, the case of Jodi Arias versus the state of Arizona reached its climax. The nation held its breath as the jury retired to deliberate. The courtroom that had once echoed with arguments and cross-examinations now sat in uneasy silence. On May 8, 2013, the verdict was read. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder. As the words echoed through the chamber, she showed little emotion. No tears, no collapse, just a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Some jurors later described the moment as chilling. For them, the decision was clear. This was a calculated act of brutality, not a moment of self-defense. But the trial wasn't over yet. The next phase, the sentencing, would determine whether Jodi Arias would live or die. During the sentencing hearing, the prosecution argued for the death penalty. They described the killing as cruel, heinous, and depraved. Travis's siblings gave emotional victim impact statements, speaking directly to Jodi. His sister Samantha said through tears, "You took our brother from us. You stabbed him in the heart, and then you lied about it for years." When it was her turn to address the court, Jodi stood and spoke calmly. "I wish I could take back what happened," she said, "but I can't, and I will live with this for the rest of my life." Then, in a bizarre twist, she added, "I would prefer the death penalty over life in prison." The room fell silent. Even her own defense team looked stunned. But when the jury returned, they were deadlocked. They could not reach a unanimous decision on the death sentence. Under Arizona law, that meant a retrial for sentencing. It would take another 2 years before a final decision was made. In 2015, the second jury also failed to agree on the death penalty. The judge stepped in, sentencing Jodi Arias to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Travis Alexander's family wept as the ruling was read. For them, justice had come, but peace still felt far away. The pain of losing him and the years of reliving that pain in court had left scars that no verdict could heal. Outside, the media descended once more. Reporters surrounded the courthouse, broadcasting live as Jodi was escorted away in handcuffs. Some called her the modern-day femme fatale. Others called her evil personified. But for those who knew Travis, she was something much simpler. The woman who stole his life and turned his story into a spectacle. As Jodi Arias disappeared from public view, the cameras turned off, but her shadow remained, a reminder of how obsession can masquerade as love, and how justice, even when served, can never bring back the dead. Aftermath. Then celebrations, even to the rescue. With the verdict delivered and the cameras gone, the story of Jodi Arias did not end. It simply changed shape. While Travis Alexander was laid to rest, the woman who took his life began constructing a new identity from behind prison walls. At Perryville Prison in Goodyear, Arizona, Jodi adapted quickly to her new surroundings. Reports from prison officials described her as quiet, polite, and cooperative. But beneath that calm exterior, the same manipulative charm persisted. She gave interviews, corresponded with supporters, and even managed to sell her artwork to the public through third-party sellers. In her letters, she spoke about personal growth, spirituality, and redemption. "I'm learning to forgive myself," she wrote in one message. "I know people hate me, but hate doesn't heal anything." For her critics, these statements felt hollow, just another layer of manipulation. For her followers, they were signs of a misunderstood woman trying to make peace with her past. Despite her imprisonment, Jodi maintained a devoted fan base. Letters of admiration poured in from around the world. Some called her a survivor. Others proposed marriage. Psychologists referred to it as hybristophilia, a condition where individuals are attracted to those who commit violent crimes. Once again, Jodi Arias had become a symbol of fascination, danger, and twisted desire. Meanwhile, the Alexander family struggled to move on. Travis's memory was honored through foundations, motivational programs, and online communities celebrating his life and message. Yet every time Jodi's name appeared in the news, the old wounds reopened. In 2016, Jodi appealed her conviction, arguing that the intense media coverage had deprived her of a fair trial. The appeal was denied. The court ruled that the evidence of guilt was overwhelming. Even in silence, she found ways to remain visible. Her prison drawings, portraits of celebrities, animals, and self-portraits sold online for hundreds of dollars. Critics saw it as grotesque irony. The woman who took a life profiting from a persona born of death. Years after the verdict, journalists revisited the case, producing documentaries, podcasts, and television specials. Each time, the same question resurfaced. Who was Jodi Arias really? A victim of abuse or a manipulator who weaponized love? According to Detective Esteban Flores, who led the investigation, the answer was clear. "She's dangerous," he said. "Not because of what she did once, but because of what she's capable of convincing people to believe." For Travis's friends, the trial had ended, but the story lingered, like an echo that refused to fade. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, they gathered to remember him not as a victim, but as the man he was before the storm. Kind, driven, and full of faith. Jodi Arias may have taken his life, but she could never take that. More than a decade after the murder of Travis Alexander, the echoes of the case still ripple through American culture. It was more than a tragedy. It became a mirror reflecting society's fascination with beauty, deceit, and the psychology of obsession. Criminologists and psychologists continue to study the case in universities across the country. For many, Jodi Arias represents the archetype of the female predator, a woman who uses emotion and sexuality not merely as weapons, but as tools of control. Her name appears in academic journals alongside terms like borderline personality disorder and narcissistic pathology. Documentaries and true crime programs dissect every frame of the trial footage. Podcasts revisit every detail, from the recovered photos to her eerie jailhouse interviews. She has become both a cautionary tale and a symbol, a woman who blurred the line between victim and villain so completely that even now, some people still debate which she truly was. For the Mormon community, the case left deeper wounds. Travis Alexander's faith had been his moral compass, yet his relationship with Jodi exposed the tension between faith and desire, purity and guilt. It forced uncomfortable conversations about hypocrisy, temptation, and the private struggles behind public virtue. Within the true crime genre, the Arias case also marked a turning point. It blurred entertainment and tragedy in ways that raised ethical questions. Where does storytelling end and exploitation begin? Networks replayed the footage endlessly, while social media turned the courtroom into a stage for public judgment. Viewers became jurors, headlines became scripts. But beyond the spectacle, the real legacy lies in its lessons. Detectives, prosecutors, and psychologists agree. The Jodi Arias case is a study in manipulation. Her intelligence, charm, and ability to distort truth demonstrate how obsession can dismantle empathy, and how love, when rooted in control, can destroy both lives involved. For Travis's family, legacy means something simpler: remembrance. They continue to speak publicly about forgiveness, not as absolution, but as release. His sister, Samantha, once said in an interview, "We live with what she did every day, but we also live with what he stood for: kindness, faith, and hope." That's the part she couldn't kill. Even from her prison cell, Jodi Arias remains an object of fascination and controversy. But the true story doesn't belong to her. It belongs to the man whose life was stolen, and the community forever changed by his death. The name Jodi Arias might fade from headlines, but the lessons she left behind about manipulation, obsession, and the dark side of human love will linger in textbooks, documentaries, and late-night conversations for years to come. And somewhere in that haunting silence between fascination and horror lies the true legacy of the case, a reminder that evil often wears a familiar face. Lessons in obsession. Jodi Arias remains an object of fascination and controversy. According to psychologists who later studied the Jodi Arias case, the tragedy of Travis Alexander's death was not only the result of one woman's obsession. It was a reflection of how love, when twisted by control and insecurity, can become a weapon. Jodi's obsession followed a recognizable psychological pattern. Experts describe it as erotomania, a condition in which a person becomes convinced that someone else loves them deeply, even when that love has ended or never existed at all. In Jodi's mind, Travis wasn't just a man she dated. He was destiny, proof that she was worthy, validation of her existence. When that illusion began to crumble, she did what many obsessives do. She tried to preserve it through control, and when control failed, through destruction. Dr. Kevin House, a forensic psychologist, later summarized it bluntly. She couldn't accept rejection. To her, losing him meant ceasing to exist, and so she made sure if she couldn't have him in life, no one would have him in death. The lessons from this case extend far beyond the courtroom. It became a cautionary study in the dangers of emotional dependency, the kind that masquerades as love but feeds on fear. Every letter, every voicemail, every desperate plea Jodi sent to Travis was a symptom of a deeper sickness, one that demanded possession rather than connection. In one of his last journal entries, Travis wrote, "Jodi is a wonderful girl, but something about her scares me. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it." Those words, written months before his death, now read like prophecy. They reveal an intuition many victims of obsessive relationships share but rarely act upon: the quiet awareness that love shouldn't feel like surveillance. Criminologists often highlight how dangerous obsession hides behind charm. Jodi wasn't a stranger in a dark alley. She was the smiling woman everyone thought they knew. Her control didn't come through violence at first, but through emotional pressure, guilt, dependency, seduction. And by the time the violence came, it was too late to escape. In the years since, advocates for domestic abuse awareness have cited the Arias case as a warning that psychological abuse and stalking can be just as lethal as physical violence. It forced society to re-examine how it perceives female aggressors, not as anomalies, but as individuals capable of the same darkness long attributed only to men. Love stories, the kind told in movies and songs, often end with the phrase, "forever." But the Jodi Arias case exposed the shadow side of that promise. What happens when forever becomes a threat? The story of Travis and Jodi reminds us that love cannot coexist with control. True affection liberates, obsession imprisons, and in that prison, empathy dies first, followed by everything else that makes us human. As one juror later said, she didn't kill him because she hated him. She killed him because she couldn't stop loving him. That's the kind of love that should terrify us all. Outro: the faces we love. Happy Bull, Happy Bull. According to official court transcripts, the final image ever taken of Travis Alexander shows him standing in his shower, water running down his face, eyes fixed on the camera, unaware that death is seconds away. That photo has since become a haunting emblem of love turned fatal, the instant before trust meets betrayal. But behind that image lies a deeper reflection of us all, the human need to believe in love, even when it blinds us. Every year, thousands of people fall into relationships that begin with passion and end in control. They ignore the red flags, excuse the cruelty, and call it devotion. Travis Alexander's story is not just about one woman's violence. It's about the subtle, everyday dangers of giving your heart to someone who sees it as possession. In interviews after the trial, several jurors admitted that what haunted them most was not the brutality of the crime, but the tenderness that preceded it. The photos of Jodi and Travis, smiling, laughing, sharing moments that looked ordinary, even loving, those were the images that lingered, because they proved how easy it is to mistake obsession for affection. Psychologists say that people like Jodi Arias force us to confront the darkest question of all. How well can we ever truly know the person we love? Travis's friends still visit his grave in Riverside, California. They bring photos, candles, and sometimes handwritten notes. His sister once left a message that read, "We forgive you for trusting too much. It was your greatest gift and your greatest curse." The story of Travis Alexander is not about monsters hiding in the shadows. It's about monsters hiding in plain sight, smiling, loving, and promising forever. And as the credits of this tragedy fade, one truth remains unshaken. The faces we love the most can sometimes be the ones that destroy us. In the quiet after the verdict, in the stillness of a courtroom now empty, the echo of one life lost and another wasted continues to whisper a warning. That love without empathy is only obsession wearing a mask. This was the story of Travis Alexander, a man who loved, forgave, and believed until the end. And of Jodi Arias, the woman who mistook love for ownership. Together, they remind us that even the brightest hearts can cast the darkest shadows. Pastify, true crime documentary,